podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Two-Footed Podcast here on EPL Index. Now, before we kick things off today, I just want to share something with everybody. This episode is brought to you by our partners at Sky Bet, and we've teamed up with Sky Bet because they truly understand what it means to be a fan. Sky Bet appreciates the length that people go through to support their team in all areas, whether you're a match-going fan or otherwise, and there's just no better fit for us right now than a partnership with the good folks at Sky Bet. So with that said, let's go. What's good, boys and girls? Two-Footed Podcast. Today is Wednesday. It is the 15th of May, and the sun has returned. So that's nice. Last night in the Premier League, Manchester City moved to the brink of a fourth successive Premier League title. A sixth in 7 years under Pep Guardiola. Well, it'll be 6 and 8 years under Pep, but 6 in the last 7. And fractured Arsenal hearts with a 2-0 win over Tottenham Hotspur at the Tottenham Stadium. Erling Haaland on 51 minutes, a tap-it from a Kevin De Bruyne cross, and again on 91 minutes from the penalty spot after Jeremy Doku was tripped in the Spurs box. I don't really know what way to go with this. Like, Tottenham gave them a really good game. Tottenham had a proper go at that. They had some decent opportunities to score. Ederson made 1 or 2 good saves. Ortega came on and made a couple of really good saves. People will point to the Son miss. I think that's an incredibly good save, more so than a bad miss. I know the viewpoint is that when a striker is through one-on-one, we need to expect them to score, but at what point can we give goalkeepers their due? Stefan Ortega came off the bench in the biggest game of the Premier League season for Man City and made an outstanding save. And I think he needs more credit than Heung-min Son needs criticism, to be completely honest. I liked a lot of what Spurs did. I thought playing Van de Ven at left back and Dragozan and Romero as the 2 centre-backs allowed them to kind of defend with a 3, let Pedro Porro push high up the right. It's a shame that Bissouma wasn't there in midfield because I thought Højbjerg had a bit of a shaky game. But I think if he'd been there, given what they were doing in midfield with Bentancur, with Sarr, that was quite good. Maddison floating around, that was not as effective as you would have hoped, but James Maddison has gone off the boil. But you could see for next season how some of this might work for Spurs. And obviously Destiny Udogie comes back in and almost certainly goes back into the team. But I do wonder if perhaps Ange saw some stuff last night that might make him think maybe a back 3 is the way to go next year. Romero, Dragozan, Van de Ven, with Porro and Udogie as wing-backs, Bissouma and Sarr as a double pivot, and then Maddison behind the front 2 of Son plus another. Like, for me, that would make the most sense with their squad. I don't know if he'll do it, but a lot of people today criticising Spurs and criticising their fans. And look, I can understand Arsenal fans being upset about Spurs losing the game and therefore City being on the brink of the title. But I'm old enough to remember 2019 when Arsenal fans were very publicly saying, I'm happy to lose the Europa League final if Spurs lose the Champions League final. I know for an absolute fact that if the roles were reversed and Arsenal were playing Liverpool And if Liverpool lost, it would hand the title to Spurs. I'm old enough to know that Arsenal fans will be quite happy with Liverpool beating their team and winning the league over Tottenham. It is a great achievement for Man City to win 4 in a row. And obviously people will point at 115 charges, the likelihood of a second investigation that covers 2018 to now and all the rest. And rightly so. Like, you cannot talk about their success without talking about that. You can't. But at the same time, these players have to go out and prove it. And they have to go out and do it game after game. And Guardiola has to get them ready game after game, year after year. And the standard that they've set and the way they've maintained that standard is absolutely incredible. You look at their titles that they've won. 17-18, they win it with 100 points. Right? That in itself is incredible. To win a title with 100 points might never happen again. The next year, they win it with 98. They get pushed all the way by Liverpool. But it's not just that they won the league title that year. They also won both domestic cups. So you're looking at the first ever Centurions, followed by the first ever domestic treble in back-to-back seasons. They'd also won the League Cup the year they got 100 points. Now, then they have that year, 1920, where they finish second. They get blown away by Liverpool, but they also win a League Cup that year. The following season, they win the Premier League. They win the League Cup again. That Premier League title is probably the least impressive of their titles, because Liverpool had all those injuries to deal with and there was nobody else anywhere close to them. Manchester United got 74 points and finished second. Chelsea were third on 69. Sorry, Liverpool were third on 69. Chelsea were fourth on 67. Like, they won that title at a canter. And as I said the other day, they knew they had that title wrapped up from March onwards. And they lose 4 games in March, April, and May. 3 of them at home, which is unheard of. Like, they would have gotten to 90 points quite comfortably if they'd needed to. But they decided to focus in on the European Cup and obviously got to the final that year. It wasn't to be. But they still won a league. They still won a League Cup and got to a European Cup final. That's still a really, really impressive season. 21-22, again, they win the league. It's 93 points that year. They did stumble a little bit in the run-in, but they were always in control. They never lost top spot. Last season, then, they win a treble of Premier League, FA Cup, and Champions League. It's only the second time an English club has done that after United in 99. And this season, then, they've won the league title, assuming they beat West Ham. They're in the final of the FA Cup. Like, it's just this remarkable run of success that you do have to tip your cap to, whether grudgingly or not. You have to tip your cap to it. This is Pep's 8th season. He's going to end 7 of them with silverware, assuming they win the league or the FA Cup. He likely ends with 2 trophies. And again, they did that in year 1. In year 2, they won a treble. In 2021, they won 2. In 21-22, only 1. Last season, also 2. 3, and this season, likely 2. That will be 5 of 8 seasons in which they'll have won at least 2 trophies. And they will have 2 seasons with 3. Now, I'm not counting the European Super Cup. I'm not counting the Club World Cup. They've also won them this year, by the way. So they'll have won 4 trophies at the end of this year if they see out the league and win the FA Cup final. But it's just an incredible level of success and maintaining success, maintaining standards. That first year, when he'd just taken over, City were good, but not what we'd expected them to be. They finished, third that year? Yeah, they finished third that year. But we saw the early signs of what we could expect. He took over a squad that had plenty of talent, but it was aging talent. You know, Vincent Kompany was 31 at that point. Fernandinho was 29. Aguero was 28, had a number of injuries. David Silva was 31. Sorry, Fernandinho was 32. Fernando, the Brazilian, was in the squad. He was 29. Fernandinho was 32. So that's Kompany, Silva, and Fernandinho all over 30. Yaya Toure was 34. That's 4 of the pillars of that club were over 30. With Aguero the only one who wasn't at 28 and had injuries. Now, look, obviously they brought in KDB, they brought in Leroy Sané, they brought in Raheem Sterling. They were freshening things up, but they were still very much in transition from, you know, the team of Yaya, Silva, Kompany, Aguero to the next iteration. And Pep was able in year 2 to kind of marry what would be his team with what had been there before. They'd finished 4th the year before he took over. They'd won the League Cup. The year before that, they'd finished 2nd. And the year before that, they'd won the Premier League. Like, success had been there. You know, it wasn't like a thing that Pep was walking into a club that didn't know how to win some trophies. They'd won 2 league titles. They'd won an FA Cup. They'd won a League Cup. They'd had some success. But for him, it was about more than just having some success. It was about being dominant and creating a team that would have a lasting legacy. And look, their legacy is always going to be tainted. But at the same time, they're on the brink of a 10th league title. And 6 of them will have come under him. They're on the brink of an 8th FA Cup, and 3 of them will have come under him. They've won 8 League Cups. 4 of them have been under his watch. They've won their only European Cup under his watch. It's a remarkable thing that he's done there. And look, I've said this before, and I still believe this. There's no manager in history that has had the deck stacked so heavily in their favour. At Barcelona, he walks into a ready-made squad. You've got Messi, you've got Iniesta, you've got Piqué, you've got Busquets coming through the academy. You've got Puyol, you've got Xavi. You've got the ingredients there for incredible heights. Lionel Messi was on the brink of becoming the best player in the world before Pep walked in the door. Pep helped him get there for sure. But Messi, we already knew, was a very different footballer. Iniesta, we knew, was a different footballer. Xavi, the same. These are special players. So he had that at Barca. He had a huge financial advantage over everybody in his own league, bar Real. But the other 18 were looking at the 2 of them from miles away. Then he goes to Bayern. Huge financial advantage over everybody. And a great team. A team that had won the European Cup the year before. A team that had won a treble. And then he comes to City. And again, he walks into a squad that had won before. They'd won league titles. There was great players there. They had all the money in the world. Like, he's never, ever had to walk into a job as an underdog. He's never had, Ferguson at Aberdeen type of situation. He's never had Klopp at Mainz. He's never had any of that. Never had Mourinho at Porto situation. He's always had things stacked in his advantage. But to his credit, he's never allowed the level to drop. He's never taken it for granted. Are they as good now as they were in 2017 to 2019? No. But in this era, they're going to win 4 league titles in a row, and they won a European Cup. That team won 2 league titles. They won them in incredible fashion, 198 points across 2 seasons. Like, as a Liverpool fan, we always look at 18-19 and 19-20 and think we took 196 points in 2 years. Well, City did more than that. City won 2 more points. Now, City didn't win a European Cup, but did win an FA Cup and 2 League Cups. So, they can rightly point to that team as an all-timer. They'll point to this team as an all-timer because of 4 league titles in a row because of the treble last year, but I don't think it's as good as that other team. It's a remarkable thing to win 4 league titles in a row. It really is. There's a reason it hasn't been done before. There's a reason it hasn't been done before. There's a reason teams run out of steam. Generally in year 3, and it did feel like they'd run out of steam a bit last year. And then they just cantered to the title. Felt a little bit like they'd run out of steam this year as well. But at the same time, they're going to win the league. And Arsenal fans and neutral fans that say Arsenal deserve to win the league over them, I'd love to hear the logic as to how or why. I really would. I'd love to hear the logic as to why Arsenal deserve to win the league more than Manchester City. Because you're certainly not a better team. If we look at all competitions this year, Arsenal 51 games, City 57. So they've had to play more than you. Arsenal 33 wins. So City have played 6 games more, and yet they've won 9 more games with 42. In 51 games, Arsenal have lost 10 times. City have only lost 4 times. In all competitions, City have scored 145 goals. Arsenal have scored 111. Oh, but City are better, or Arsenal are better defensively. Okay. In 51 games, they've conceded 42 goals. And in 57 games, City have conceded 51. Per game, it's not a big difference. Arsenal's goal difference in the season is plus 94. City's goal difference is plus 94. Arsenal's is plus 69. Like, whatever metric you want to look at, City have just been better. They've just been better. City's win percentage for the season is 73.68%. Arsenal's is 64.71. That's quite a bit less. Yes, they've done very well in the league. Yes, they're going to end the season with the same amount of league games won as City. But they haven't been as good as City all season. And City's focus has been split. Arsenal have played 14 games outside the Premier League. City have played 20. City are going to win the FA Cup. Barring a miracle, City are going to win the FA Cup. Look what they're up against. That United team are a shambles. Arsenal went out in the 3rd round. Now, yes, they both went out at the same point in the Champions League. But City went out to Real Madrid. Arsenal went out to a bad Bayern Munich team. The League Cup is the only area that Arsenal have outperformed Manchester City this year. City went out in the first hurdle, the third round. They lost away to Newcastle. Arsenal lost away to West Ham in the fourth round, the second hurdle. Like, they haven't been as good. I also don't think, if you look at all competitions, Arsenal have been better than Liverpool this year. Liverpool have silverware. Liverpool have improved, assuming Liverpool win their final game. Assuming they win the final game, which, look, they may not. They may just capitulate because defensively the structure is atrocious. But Liverpool, if they win their final game, are going to end up on 82 points. That'll be 7 less than Arsenal. But Arsenal had 84 last year. Liverpool last year had, if I'm not mistaken, 67 points. Yeah. Liverpool will have made a 15-point jump this season. Arsenal have 5. So who's improved more year to year? Liverpool have. I think third and a cup with 82 points is more impressive than second and nothing with 89. You don't get a participation ribbon for finishing second. And Arsenal fans will go through different stages over the next few days. And Liverpool fans understand this because we've been there. First of all, there's anger. Anger at rivals for not getting the job done. Be angry at yourself for needing them to get the job done. And yes, Arsenal can look at their run this calendar year and say, well, we won 8 in a row. We drew with City. We won 2 more. We only lost 1 game. You know, we've won, was it 15 of 17? Great. Why did you need to do that? Because you lost away to Fulham. You drew away to West Ham. Like, these are bad results. To draw there against a bad Chelsea team, a draw against Fulham. Like, you've had some bad results this season. You left yourself too much work to do. You cannot go into the turn of the year level with City. You just can't. And bearing in mind, you went to Anfield on the 23rd of March and Pray for Liverpool was trending on social media. And you drew and thought you were brilliant. Then you lost the next 2 games. You went to City in match week 30, which was the 31st of March. You parked the bus, came away with a 0-0 draw after time wasting the shit out of things and acted like you'd won something. If you'd been 6 or 7 points clear, that would have been fine, but you weren't. You just weren't. You've never built a lead over City that allowed you any breathing room. You've never built a lead over City where you could confidently say, we're favourites to win the league this year. Last year you did, you threw that away. This year you didn't. And yet there's been an arrogance about Arsenal fans. Pray for Liverpool. Pray for Bayern. Remember Pray for Bayern? You got dumped out of the Champions League. Like, you entered the season talking about potentially running away with the league. I'm already seeing Arsenal fans say that they're going to piss the league next year. Really? You don't think the league's going to get better? Like, there's an idea that Liverpool have overachieved this year because of Klopp. That's not true. Third was the floor for this team this year. Liverpool will get better. They will get better. Even if the manager is not as good, the players will get better. The processes will get better. they won't have as many injuries. It's very unlikely they get as badly screwed over by the PGMOL. It's also very unlikely that every decision continues to go Arsenal's way as it has this season. It's also unlikely that Arsenal continue to have the same kind of luck with injuries they've had this season. But Aston Villa are going to strengthen. Now, Champions League might cause a little drop off in the Premier League next season, but they're going to improve over the next couple of years. Tottenham are going to improve. Tottenham are going to improve. Newcastle are going to improve. Chelsea are going to improve. Manchester United are going to improve. And even though they might not become as good as Arsenal, they might just be good enough to take more points off you. And that's the key here. The key here is that this league basically has 3 teams that were pretty good for a long spell. 2 teams that look like they could be good. And all the rest were varying degrees of bad. Now, we can praise a club like Bournemouth for what they've done. We can praise a club like Palace for what they've done lately. But when you compare them to the top level clubs, they're quite a distance off. Like Bournemouth are 31 points behind Liverpool. They're 20 points behind Villa. Villa are 20 points behind City. Like, there's not elite level clubs up and down this division. It's a very weak division. You've got a team in Nottingham Forest who are going to stay up with 29 points. If they lose their last game, they're still staying up. Unless they get absolutely demolished and Luton go to Fulham, or maybe they're playing them at home. I think they're playing them at home. But unless they put like 8 past them, they've got no chance. No chance. Even if they put 8 past them, they would still need Forest to lose by 5. It's just not happening. Or 4, maybe it would be. I think it's 4. Because then they'd have the same goal difference, but Luton would have scored more. Like, it's just not happening. Forest are going to stay up with 29 points this year. Last year, Everton stayed up with 36, but 35 would have been enough to stay up. 34 with a better goal difference. The year before, Leeds stayed up with 38. 36 would have been enough. Like, it's possible that 27 would be enough this year if Luton lose. You've got to go back. You go back to 2021, which is a weird season for a lot of reasons. The bottom 3 were all miles off everybody else. Burnley lost their last 3 games and still ended up with 39 points in 17th. 1920, Villa stayed up with 35 points. Skin of their teeth. 18-19, Brighton stay up with 36. 35 would have been enough. 34 would have been enough in 17-18. In 16-17, you needed 35 to stay up. 15-16, you needed 38 to stay up. And 14-15, 36 would have been enough. It was a long way from 36 to 27 or even 29 at the bottom of the table where every point is so hard to come by. So when people say, oh, the league is stronger than ever because look at the points totals at the top, they don't look at the points totals at the bottom. They just don't. Like, again, to go back over this, the bottom 3 in 14-15 took 98 points between them. 15-16, you've got that horrendous Villa team, obviously. But it's still 88 points between the bottom 3. Villa took 17, but still 88 points between the bottom 3. 16-17, it's 86 points between the bottom 3. 17-18, we're back up to 97. 18-19, you're looking at 76, which is very low. Big part of that is that terrible Huddersfield team. 19-20, it's 89. 2021, weird year, we're looking at 77. 21-22, weak year again. Got two really poor teams. But again, you're still looking at 80 points. Last season, you're looking at, what's that? That's eight, again, that's 90 points. 90 points last year. This year, now Burnley play Forest. Let's assume they lose. Sheffield United play Spurs. Let's assume they lose. They've taken 40 points between them. And the max for Luton is 29. Do you know what I mean? 69 points. That's really, really low. If Luton lose, that's 66 points. 66 points between three teams. It's really, really weak at the bottom of the league. That's why you're seeing variance at the top. It's not a surprise that City are winning the title. It's not a surprise. Arsenal have given it a really good go. They've improved since last year in certain ways. The mindset is better. They're not as good going forward. Part of that is because they've become very defensive. They're playing with 6 defensive players, not including the goalkeeper. So that's 7 defensive players. That's 2/3 of your team. When 2/3 of your team are defensive, that's just going to be your identity. And you're not going to be as good going forward. What they've been able to do, and people would say, oh, well, look how many goals they've scored. And I'm more than capable of looking at the fact that this season they've scored 89. Last season they scored 88. So yes, they've scored more goals. They haven't been as good in an attacking sense. What they've done this year is they've put more control into their game. There's very little variance in an Arsenal game. Generally, they score fairly early, often from a set piece, and then they just counterattack the life out of teams. And they're very, very good at doing that. Like, they're very good at what they do. But it doesn't allow for much variance. So, when Fulham go 2-1 up away with over 30 minutes left, Arsenal don't know how to react in that circumstance. When West Ham are 2-0 up with 35 minutes plus stoppage time left, they don't know how to react. Same thing with Villa. Like, when those late goals hit Arsenal, they didn't know how to react. You never watch Arsenal and feel like they're capable of completely opening a team up and getting a great early chance. A lot of their early goals are either set pieces or they're a moment of genuine brilliance from somebody. Now, it might be Odegaard with a pass, Saka with a dribble. It could be Trossard with a great finish. But once they get that first goal, then things become very, very simple for them. And most teams give up. But you watch Arsenal play, if they don't get that early goal, it becomes a slog for them. And they had a lot of fortune this season as well with certain results. The Manchester United game, I've referenced it many times. The Declan Rice goal in the 96th minute that puts them ahead is a blatant foul by Gabriel on Johnny Evans. The Chelsea game, the 2-2. Chelsea are 2-0 up and cruising. And then the goalkeeper makes a huge mistake on 77. They score and get back into it. There's the game at Anfield. Not only the blatant penalty that was denied, but Liverpool missing that huge 4v1 because Trent, for whatever reason, decided to welly the ball rather than just pass it into the bottom corner. There's a lot of fortune there. There's a lot of fortune in the Luton game. 5 minutes of stoppage time be played and Rice scores in the 97th. Now, that's again, there's variance in there in that just because it says 5 minutes, it's a minimum of 5 minutes. If things happen, that has to be extended. So that's not to say that's an officiating thing that favours Arsenal, but it is a bit of fortune that favours Arsenal. Yeah, the Spurs game recently, multiple decisions that went in their favour that weren't. The Bournemouth game with the early penalty, which absolutely should not have been a penalty. Rasmus Højlund slipping. Like, these things happen to every team. It's not just an Arsenal team. They're not where they are just because of luck. But luck does play a big factor, and they've had quite a bit of it this year. And Arsenal fans will attest to the fact that in previous years, most of the luck has gone against them. They will attest to, in previous years, a higher percentage of refereeing decisions went against them. In previous years, they had a lot more injuries. That's down to luck. That's down to variance. That's not things you can necessarily control all that much. What they have been able to control is variance on the pitch. And they do that by going out, starting early, setting a tone, setting a tempo, getting an early goal, and then sitting back and counterattacking. And they're very good at it. Very good at it. But when games go against them, they're not necessarily the best at reacting to that. They don't necessarily have all that many great in-game changes that can pull them from a 2-goal deficit back to drawing or winning. I mean, there's that Chelsea game where they come from 2 back, but again, that's entirely down to a very, very poor decision by a goalkeeper. I don't know that they've been 2 behind and come back to get anything in another game this season. With City, they could be 2-0 down, and you'd still believe they were going to win 3-2 no matter what. So they'll have to pick themselves up. They'll have to go again next year. It becomes very hard to do that. You know, that's 2 seasons in a row where Arsenal believed they were going to win the title, and it was taken away from them late on. You only get a certain amount of bites at the apple. The league will get better. You don't have, just because your team is young, that doesn't mean you have this unending window. You're going to have injuries. You're going to have players wanting to move on. You're going to have situations where other teams just get better and maybe do bypass you. You know? And like, it's a funny thing to look at that Arsenal squad and you look at the players that are there. Aaron Ramsdale, signed by this manager, lauded, given a new contract, and then dumped. William Saliba, manager wanted nothing to do with him, signed Ben White to replace him. Ben White, signed to replace Saliba at centre-back, didn't work out there, shunted to right-back. Thomas Partey, off-field issues. Gabriel has been absolutely tremendous for them. I know he makes the odd error, but he has been excellent for them. And the fact that the other fella keeps getting man of the match awards for his work, it really annoys me. Saka is magnificent. He was there before the manager came in. He has been tremendous. Everybody knew he was going to be great. Odegaard's been phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Second best player in the league this season for me. Phenomenal. Gabriel Jesus, signed 2 summers ago, well, summer before last. Already talked that he's in the chopping block this summer and that City want to move on. You know, flop, not a flop, I don't know. A lot of injuries, niggles, different things. Emile Smith-Rowe, this manager's never really given him an opportunity. Gabriel Martinelli, great year last year, had developed well under this manager, but took a step back this year. Julian Timber got injured. There's nothing really to say about him. Eddie Nketiah, very promising academy player, hasn't really clicked properly under this manager, probably gets moved on. Jakub Kivor, he's a good squad player. Cedric Soares, the less said, the better. Tomiyasu, he's a good squad player. I think he's a better right back than Ben White, but he doesn't offer as much going forward. Trossard's been great. Trossard's been absolutely brilliant. I called that signing before they made it. I thought he was exactly what they needed as a kind of an impact sub, a versatile attacker that could step in across the line. Jorginho's quite hit and miss. Fabio Vieira has been a flop. David Reyes come in, he's done well. I still don't think he's as good as people make him out to be. I think it helps when you play behind 6 defensive players. Reece Nelson hasn't worked under this manager. El Neni's just there for vibes. I keep being told that Kai Havertz has been a great signing. He was bought to play in midfield. He was trash in midfield. He gets moved up front. He's been okay. He hasn't been great. He's been okay. But then I see the same Arsenal fans hyping him up, then saying in the next sentence, we need to go and buy a big money striker this summer. So where's Kai Havertz going to play? Is he going to go back into midfield? He was trash there. Zinchenko. Arsenal fans want him out already. Last year, they couldn't have enough of him. Best left back in the league, I was told. This year, they want him gone. Declan Rice was bought to be a 6. Was okay as a 6. Never as good as people made him out to be. He's been very good in the box-to-box role that he's always meant to play. So I'm not really sure. Like, Arteta bought him to play as a 6, Havertz to play as an 8, White to play as a centre-back, and they've all not failed in those positions. White and Havertz did. Rice was okay. But they've had to be moved to have success. So is the manager misprofiling players? Is that the thing? Is his talent ID just a little bit off where he can see a good player, but he doesn't really get where they should play? Because there's quite a few of them in that squad. There's quite a few of them. Like, I often wonder, would Martinelli and Jesus work better if they swapped, if Jesus went left and Martinelli went through the middle? I kind of feel like they would. I think they'd work better that way. But again, then what do you do with Kai Havertz? And Havertz and Martinelli doesn't really work at all, which is weird, because I thought that's the one that really would work. Now, in time, maybe it will. Like, Martinelli's still so young. What is he? Is he 22 now? Yeah, he'll be 23 this summer. He's so young. So maybe they work on that over the summer and they come back next season and it clicks. But, I mean, they need Martinelli and Saka to have big goal-scoring seasons if they're going to play with Kai Havertz as the 9. And if they're not, they're going to go and buy a striker, that might well have a negative impact on Martinelli. So you've got to find a balance there between, what's actually best for the team, which combinations amplify us best. It can't just be a thing of, you throw a 20-goal a season striker in there and automatically improves them, because it doesn't. It doesn't at all. But it is funny that you could spend 620 million, win nothing, because he won the FA Cup before he spent a penny. But win 620 million, win nothing, be under no pressure, and be hailed as a genius. Especially when some of your genius signings, you signed to play in different positions, and you overpaid for them. And the wage bill's going to come due as well, so that's going to be fun. We'll go to break. When we come back, we're going to look at tonight's games. I'll see you after this. Right, welcome back. So, we have 2 games in the Premier League tonight. We're going to quickly touch on them, and then we want to have a quick look at the playoff situation as well. So, Brighton and Hove Albion against Chelsea. In Brighton, 7:45 kickoff. Brighton are 10th, Chelsea are 7th. Brighton are in fairly messy form. 1 win in their last 5. Defensively looking very, very shaky, though since Verbruggen got the nod sort of full-time, they do look better. No doubt Jason Steele will start tonight. Chelsea have won 3 in a row and have climbed up into 7th and have a real chance to get 6th. With 2 games left, this game is winnable for them. And then on the final day, they play Bournemouth home. The team, obviously, that they're competing with for that spot is Newcastle. They're away to Manchester United tonight. We're going to come to that one. 2-0 away to Brentford final day, that's definitely winnable. Brentford have not been good this year. But if Chelsea gets sixth, I think the general perception will be it's an improvement. Because obviously last year they finished 12th. Last year they finished with 44 points. If they win out this year, they'll end up with 63. So they'll point towards progress. But let's all be really honest here. They've been a mess this year. They've been a mess this season. And they did not spend £1 billion to finish 6th or 7th. They spent that money to get back into the top 4, to be in the Champions League. And a lot of the teams around them will continue to improve, as they will. But they've got big decisions ahead of them this summer. I expect them to win tonight, just because I think, although Brighton at home, last home game of the season, Brighton might just want to give their fans something to cheer about as they head into the summer break. They also will probably want to secure that top half finish, which would be only the 3rd in their history. So, do you know what? I'll actually go with the draw. I'll go 2-2. The other game then is Manchester United home to Newcastle. United have lost their last 2. They've lost 14 Premier League games this season. Newcastle and then away to actually Brighton have 2 home games. Away to Brighton, I think they're definitely losing. So we might see United lose 16 games this year. I just fully expect Toon to go in there and beat them. Toon have won 3 of 4. Probably should have beaten Brighton last time out. I'll go Toon to win. I'll go 2-0. I'll go 2-0. United have so many injuries. Their defence is just... I mean, it's an absolute catastrophe. And you keep hearing, oh, well, this player's going to be back, and they're going to be back, and they're going to be back, and yet they never come back. United have 11 players out or doubtful for tonight. Malacia, Shaw, and Maguire. Just don't think we're going to see Shaw or Maguire again this season. Maybe the FA Cup final. Maybe. They're not playing again in the league. Varane most likely out tonight. Diallo out tonight. Martial out tonight. Lindelof is out. Martinez, they're hopeful, could be on the bench tonight. Rashford is a doubt. Fernandes is a doubt. And Mount is probably done for the season. Now, with the FA Cup on the horizon, it might be wise for them to rest these players coming back tonight, give them a run at the weekend, and then have them ready for the FA Cup final. But can Ten Hag afford too many more defeats, especially considering this is the last home game of the year? And then Newcastle have a lot of injuries themselves. Botman, Lascelles, Tonali, Willock, Miley, they're all out. Isak is a doubt. Target is out. Wilson's very unlikely to play. And Fabian Schär is unlikely to play. Like, they've got their own issues, but Newcastle have a way of playing, and they've got a belief in themselves. And they've got form. United have none of these things. So, yeah, I will go Newcastle to win. And to be fair, Chelsea's injury situation has cleared up a bit. Still no Fofana, Lavia, or Enzo. They're done for the year. Chilwell probably back for the weekend. Carney back for the weekend. Sanchez out for the season. Brighton, no March, no Estupinan, no Milner, no Ferguson, no Hinchelwood, no Matoma, no Van Hecke. They're all done for the year. And Joel Veltman is a doubt. I think I'll go the draw between Brighton and Chelsea, and I'll go Newcastle to win at Old Trafford. More importantly this week than those games, which really and truly are meaningless, like you're competing over scraps there. We do have the playoff semi-finals taking place and the playoff finals coming. And as you will have heard at the start of this podcast, today's episode is brought to you by Sky Bet. So let's start in League Two, where I should have talked about this on Monday. I meant to talk about it yesterday, but then there was no pod yesterday because I was busy. So we'll talk about it now. I was stunned watching the League Two playoff semi-final second legs on Friday and Saturday. Absolutely stunned by what I saw. So let's start with Friday. Doncaster go into the game in really good form and holding a 2-0 lead. Now, if we go back to the 2nd of March, they lose 3-1 away to Walsall. Then they draw 1-1 away to Bradford. Then they beat Crewe 2-0. They beat Swindon 2-1. They beat Forest Green 2-0. They beat Crawley 2-0. They beat Wrexham 1-0. They beat Morecambe 3-0. They beat Walsall 2-1. They beat Accrington Stanley 4-0. They beat Barrow 4-2. They beat Colchester 4-1. And then they finally don't win a game. They draw 2-2 with Gillingham. A Gillingham team that had nothing to play for, but just decided to turn up after a really poor end to the season. Doncaster, I think, probably win the game if they don't have a man sent off. They're 2-0 up. Man sent off in the 55th minute. Concede 2 quick goals. So they probably would have won that, which would have been 11 wins in a row. But nonetheless, they won 10 in a row and launched themselves into the playoffs, which they didn't look in any way likely to achieve before that run of 10 wins in a row. Like, before that run began, they were 19th in the division. Sorry, I tell a lie. They were 21st in the division. They were 21st in the division after the draw with Bradford. Winning 10 in a row got them to 5th. And my feeling was they're going to go up because they're riding an unbelievable crest. But unfortunately for them, they go into these playoffs. They win the first game, like I said, 2-0 away to Crewe. And then, for whatever reason, the team that they had been through the first 36 games, 35 games, the first 35 games of the season, which was, you know, a relegation threatened team, reappeared. And they were just dreadful. Demetrio scores on 6. Maxwell puts through his own net on 16. And Doncaster just couldn't get their heads in the game. They couldn't do all the things that had been working for them so well. They had loads of chances. They just couldn't put the ball in the back net. They needed 1 goal. 1 goal. They didn't even need to win or get a draw. 1 goal and they were through to the playoff final and they couldn't find it. And it went to penalties. And it just seemed like they just crumbled. Even the penalties they scored, they looked nervy. So Crewe overturn the 2-0 deficit away, and Crewe are heading to Wembley. Crewe Alexandra will play in the League Two playoff final. And, you know, to their credit, they have been the better team across the course of the season. Like, they got into the playoff spots in week 7 and stayed in them for all bar 1 week. Never dropped below 8th after that. They ended the season in poor form. While Doncaster were running off 10 wins in a row, Crewe lost 5, drew 3, and won only 2, which is why I thought Doncaster are going to run through them here. And then they win Doncaster win the first leg, and there's no reason to think that Crewe can overcome them. But they did. They did, and fair play. Crewe are in the playoff final. They will face Crawley Town. Now, Crawley won the first leg 3-0 against MK Dons. But MK Dons had been comfortably a better team this year than Crawley. They finished with 8 more points, but that was after a little bit of a slow end to the season. MK Dons, for a while, looked like they might get automatic promotion. So you thought they've at least got a chance here. They're at home, they've got a chance here. That chance was gone within 3 minutes. Jay Williams scores. Danilo Orso scores on 30. It's now 5-0 in aggregate. Max Dean gets one back. And you think, you know what? You're not going through. You're 5-1 down in aggregate. But at least, try and get a result tonight. Try and win tonight's game. You're 2-1 down. It's half time. Try and win tonight's game and salvage something. Orsi scores again on 48. Jack Rolls scores on 80. And Orsi gets his hat-trick on 92. And Crawley win 5-1. 8-1 in aggregate. And Crawley Town will face Crew Alexandra in the playoff final this Sunday, which is the 19th. We'll talk about that more on Friday. On Friday, we'll also talk about the League One playoff final, which is Bolton versus Oxford. But for today, let's have a quick look at Leeds against Southampton. So the first legs took place on Sunday, and both of them ended 0-0. Norwich not beating Leeds bodes very badly for Norwich for the second leg, because Norwich have been a really good home team, but not a particularly good away team. And that was a Leeds team missing a couple of players as well. I think Leeds went there with a specific job in mind, which was to just get out of there with a result or just not lose heavily. And yet, Norwich allowed them to have more of the ball, allowed them better opportunities. I just thought it was really, really flat from Norwich. Really, really flat. And if one team was going to win that game, it was going to be Leeds. They'll play tomorrow night in the second leg. You'd have to make Leeds now heavy favourites to go through. They are the better team. There's no question there. They finished 17 points clear of them, and that was losing 3 of their last 4. Leeds were in the mix to go up automatically right up until the final day. If they had won and Ipswich had lost, they would have gone up automatically. But instead, they failed to get the job done. But I thought going into that game, just given Norwich's home form, that maybe Norwich would turn them over and make the second leg really interesting. Because even though Norwich's away form has been poor, Leeds have dropped points at home recently in games that you thought they'd win comfortably. But tomorrow night, I think Leeds go there and win. Leeds at home, I think they win by 2 or 3 goals and move on. The West Brom Southampton game, I thought was more exciting. Thought there was more action, more attacking intent from both teams. Like I said, Leeds just seemed there to try and get the results. Didn't feel like they went to win the game, but it did feel like if one of the teams was going to win the game, it would be them, because Norwich came out so flat. West Brom had a go at Southampton, set themselves up to counter-attack and had a go, and had some good opportunities, but just couldn't find a goal. Saints, for their hand, I thought they played quite well. I did think they played quite well. Again, they had some opportunities as well. It's so funny to look at that squad, and it's just so meh. That team they're putting out. Midfield, Smallbone, he's all right. Downs, he's all right. Aribo, meh. Ryan Manning. I think Stevens and Bednarek in your back 3. Like, they own far better players than they're playing. Do you know what I mean? I know promotion is the only thing that matters for them. And experience is kind of what you want, but they've got much better players. They've got players on loan that should be starting in that team. They'll play the second leg Friday. We can talk a bit more about it on Friday. still don't know who I'm picking to win that one. Neither of them ended the season in particularly good form. Saints are the better team. Like they are. They finished 12 points ahead of them. Saints are the better team. But there's a defensive frailty to that Southampton team that really concerns me. They conceded 63 goals this season. West Brom only conceded 47. Now, Saints will say, oh, well, we were so much more attacking. And fair enough, you were. But, like, you're really frail defensively. You're always open. Always, always open. And I feel like West Brom, because they've got good players on the counter, they've got decent pace on that side. Even though I think Saints should win, I feel like West Brom could go there, get an early goal, really bed in, and they're a good defensive team, and counter the life out of that Southampton team, which if they have to open up, they're even more open. Like, they're open as it is. They're quite easy to play through. And if they've got to chase the game, they're going to be even more easy to play through. And I feel like if West Brom can find an early goal, that game becomes very straightforward for them. Now, look, Saints are a decent team in the final third. They'll create a lot of chances. They created a lot of chances in that first game, just couldn't take them. But they do leave themselves really, really open at the back. So we're in a pretty good position with these playoffs. We've got a final on Saturday, a final on Sunday, and then the following Sunday, which is the 26th, we'll get the league, the championship playoff final, which it's one of the richest games in football, isn't it? Like, it can change the course of a club's future in more ways than one, not just the immediate future of, oh, look, we're in the Premier League now, but also look how much more cash rich we are for the 3 and 4 years after that. Like, Luton Town going up made a monumental change for that club. If Coventry had gone up, it would have done the same thing. Ipswich going up, exactly the same. Like, they've been in financial hell for a couple of years, but now things are going to be quite different. Leeds and Southampton desperately need this money to help them avoid penalties for FFP. West Brom and Norwich need this money because their parachute payments have run out. They need to get back in and start getting more of that good cash. Huge games. Huge, huge games. Tomorrow night, Friday night, and then Sunday week. I'll go to break. Back in a sec. Right. Welcome back. So, FIFA are to explore the impact of playing domestic matches overseas. So this would basically be the idea of shifting games away from home fans and playing them overseas for more money. That is not going to sit well with the fans. Let's just be clear about that. Pep Linders has been named the new manager of Red Bull Salzburg. Looks like Salzburg are about to lose their stranglehold on the Austrian league, having won 10 in a row. It seems like they'll lose out to Sturm Graz this year. And they're bringing in Linders with Vitor Matas as his assistant manager to try and right the ship and get them back on course next season. Michael Olise's agent has been banned for 6 months for breaching rules around a future transfer of the player when he was at Reading in 2019. Glenn Tweneboa was found to have breached the Football Association's rules by entering into an agreement which would see him eligible for a 10% cut of Olise's future transfer fee, although no such payment was made. Crazy. So Reading have spoken out about it. There's been an independent commission have investigated. It's always come, I assume, from the kind of deep dives into Reading's financial situation. Olise is going to be one of the big names on the market this summer, and yeah, Reading have been fined 200,000. Their chief executive has been suspended for 12 months and fined £5,000. That's the chief executive now or the guy that was there then? Or is he the same guy? Head of football operations Michael Gilks and club secretary Sue Hewitt have been warned over their future conduct. So the ban for the agent becomes effective from the 4th of October this year. So he'll be allowed to negotiate any potential transfer of Elise this summer. Everton have been offered 150 million by a private equity firm who specialise in distressed assets to help finance the completion of their new stadium. They've declined to comment on it. You feel like they're probably going to have to take it, but what's the catch going to be? Everton owe so much money. The cost of the stadium has already gone from 500 million to over 800 million. Are they even going to have control of said stadium by the time it's all said and done? By the time it's completed, will they even have control of that stadium? Because it doesn't look like they will as things stand right now. This is something I wasn't expecting. Breaking news. Premier League clubs will vote on whether to scrap the VAR from next season at their annual general meeting next month. Wolves have submitted a formal resolution to the Premier League, which will trigger a vote to remove VAR. The club have said VAR was introduced in good faith, but has led to numerous unintended negative consequences that are damaging the relationship between the fans and football. Now, the problem the Premier League are going to face here is that UEFA are mandating that it's still going to be in place. So I don't know how that's going to work. Can the Premier League remove it? Maybe. It's not in other divisions in the English football pyramid. So maybe they can, but they're going to be at a disadvantage then when they play in Europe. So I don't know. I think the VAR done properly would work really well. I think the VAR done the way the PGMOL does it is an absolute shambles. I'm sure certain referees would be happy to get rid of it because it would take away some of the mistakes they make. I suppose if we have automated offside, that's the biggest one. That's the biggest one. If automated offside is kept, if that's because the plan is to bring it in, if it's kept, then for reviewing other issues, then yeah, maybe getting rid of it is not a bad idea. Just because, not because I am in favour of it, but I'm not in favour of it. It's done the way it's been done. Like it's done badly. Simple as that. It's just done badly. On to the gossip. Saudi Pro League clubs are interested in signing both Casemiro and Bruno Fernandes this summer. Arsenal are set to lose promising defender Ruel Walters after the England under-20 international rejected the offer of a fresh contract to pursue opportunities elsewhere. That's a bit of a blow. But he's probably had a look and seen that Arteta isn't really giving young players many chances. Real Madrid are still interested in signing Trent Alexander-Arnold with this contract situation up in the air. Look, if they're willing to put the money up this summer, I personally would be in favour of doing a deal there. Reports of a fallout between Kylian Mbappe and PSG president Nasser Al-Khelaifi before the game against Toulouse have been dismissed by sources at the French champions. I don't think there's any relationship there for them to have a falling out anyway. Xabi Alonso hopes to manage all three of his former clubs. Okay, nonsense. Bayern Munich's interest in Oliver Glasner cooled after Crystal Palace told them they would want £86 million in compensation. Well done, Palace. Well done. That is brilliant. Napoli have reopened talks with Antonio Conte about becoming their new manager after he lowered his wage demands. But AC Milan are also keen to speak to the former Chelsea and Tottenham boss. Sevilla and former Spain defender Sergio Ramos is in advanced talks with San Diego FC over a move to MLS. Ashley Cole has been targeted by several championship clubs to take over as manager. I'd be interested to see how he does. Donny van de Beek's agent claims he will not be part of Manchester United's long-term future. Well, I mean, everybody knows that. Chelsea are looking to sign a forward, a left-back and a central defender. with Paul Winstanley and Lawrence Stewart set to be entrusted with the transfer business again, because they've done just smashing jobs so far. Really, really smashing. Nani is on the lookout for a new club after his contract with Adana Demirspor was terminated. I'm just amazed he's still playing. A number of Manchester United players are unconvinced by Rasmus Højlund's ability to find the net, so have been reluctant to pass to the 21-year-old. That just seems horrendous. What a mess of a club. What an absolute mess of a club. Bayern Munich are also interested in Bruno Fernandes. He doesn't make any real sense for them. I suppose you could play Musiala wide, Sane the other side, and play him as a 10 behind Kane. That could be really interesting, to be fair. Several leading Bayern Munich players, including Harry Kane, want Thomas Tuchel to stay at the club beyond this season. They're not going to do any better at this point, I don't think. They're not looking at the right people, is my gripe with them. Jeremy Frimpong is leaning towards leaving Bayer Leverkusen in the summer. Real Madrid, Manchester United, Arsenal, and Man City are all interested in taking advantage of his release clause. He makes no sense for Arsenal, little sense for United, not much sense for City, and some sense for Real in terms of how they play and how he plays. But be interested to see what happens there. Manchester United will listen to offers for Aaron Wan-Bissaka, who's 28 now. I'm quite surprised. I didn't realise he was that age. United are prepared to offer 55 million for Jared Branthwaite. I think that will get laughed at. Arsenal and Manchester City have made contact with Bruno Guimaraes over a summer move. I would guess he ends up at City. Chelsea will accept an offer in the region of 35 million for Romelu Lukaku. I think that's probably a lot more than they'll get offered. Thomas Frank is a strong contender to replace Eric Ten Hag at Manchester United. United have also contacted Kieran McKenna. I don't believe that. Napoli have offered Antonio Conte 5.6 million a year. That's quite a lot less than he was on in England. AC Milan want Emerson Royal. I mean, fair play. Liverpool have been offered a chance to sign Kefren Turan for 13 million. If that's true, they might actually do that. Tosin Adarabioyo is looking likely to sign for Newcastle, but Manchester United are hoping they can beat them to the punch. Arne Slot is planning to make Sipke Hojlov the first appointment to his back room when he succeeds Jurgen Klopp. I think these things are already agreed. Wolves are expected to offer Gary O'Neill a new 3-year contract. Juventus want to part ways with Max Allegri at the end of the season. That's no surprise to anybody. And Aston Villa are keen to sign Gabri Viega from Al Ahly after he indicated he wants to return to Europe. Saudi not working out all that well for you then? No? Okay. Right, that'll do me for today. Folks, as always, I must remind you that if you are engaging with gambling, and this podcast was sponsored by Sky Bet, if you are engaging with gambling, please do so responsibly. Please only do so if you're over the age of 18. If you have questions about gambling or if you're struggling with a gambling addiction, please visit begambleaware.org. And remember that Sky Bet is for the fans, by the fans, bringing life to the Sky Bet Championship, Sky Bet League 1 and Sky Bet League 2. Take care. Bye-bye.
Sports Social Podcast Network.